Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host Gyro. Today I'd like to share my impressions from the first two raids of Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn, ARR, the Crystal Tower Raids. One of them is Labyrinth of the Ancients and another one is Syrcus Tower, I believe. I do have quite a lot to say about this and hope that you will enjoy this video. Let's talk about it. So if you're new here, particularly warm welcome to you, my friends. I am one of those WoW refugees who came to Final Fantasy XIV a few weeks ago, before Asmongold and Activision Blizzard's dramas even began. And yes, I am one of those people contributing to our Final Fantasy XIV servers being flooded during peak hours. I'm sorry about that. I've started my adventures in Final Fantasy XIV by covering my experience with different elements of the game as I encounter them, as I come across them. I would like to believe that this format is helpful for my fellow WoW refugees primarily, and by the looks of it, there'll be a lot more of us coming to Final Fantasy XIV soon. So I found that the unlocking of Crystal Tower, the storyline, was actually quite good. The progressive unveiling of what's going on, and the new characters being introduced and some cinematics, a lot, like major part of the cinematics that are part of this unlock, part of this attunement, so to speak, to the raid. I actually quite enjoyed that. Yeah, not a problem. But there were still too many very Final Fantasy XIV-like errand quests woven into this attunement process, into this unlock of the raids, which, needless to say, I did not enjoy. I not make any apologies for this. Like, you go somewhere to collect some crystals, then you go to the other side of the world to hand in those crystals, just so that the quest giver sends you back to get more crystals. Like, come on, don't try and convince me that this is supposed to be enjoyable, because it is not enjoyable. It did not add any depth to the story or any interest, only unnecessary bloating of travel time and questline duration. As I got into the raid, you know, we will talk about performance at the end of this. First thing that kind of strikes a WoW refugee, and me specifically, is the fact that there is no trash. That is very surprising to my eye of a person who has been in World of Warcraft for 15 years plus, and it's a welcome sight. Overall, I'd say it's a really welcome sight. It's very unusual and makes it somewhat too empty and too clean, kind of almost, I would use the word sterile. As if, you know, I would imagine that this area should be populated by enemy's forces. You know, there have to be some smaller helpers, some smaller baddies that are helping the bigger baddies, you know what I mean? But there are none. There are none. And there are actual bosses that give loot, and then, as far as I have seen, probably some mini-boss-like encounters, I suppose, that don't give loot. But there is no literal trash, unless you choose to see those mini-bosses as trash. It still feels very, very different to what we're used to in WoW. Overall, like I said already, it does feel odd. It feels a bit odd, but again, I think overall, if I had to choose between the world full of trash, the raids full of trash, and not, I choose this version. I prefer this. Now, phased zones within the raid, at least Syrcus Tower. It is not a continued map of a raid kind of encounter, of a raid journey, as we would be used to from World of Warcraft. There is no continuity. Just like in the Outer World, except in Outer World the zones are much bigger, obviously, than they are in the instance of a raid, which is just, once again, going back to the game engine, I suppose, and the overall design of levels, and it's not the end of the world. But you do notice it as a player who experienced continuous immersive kind of worlds that Final Fantasy XIV otherwise totally looks and feels like. It just misses kind of on that continuity, and there are these disruptions, kind of a little bit of a transitioning barrier, loading screen, so to speak. Speaking of bosses, I did enjoy pretty much all of the bosses from the perspective of what they look and feel like, the models, the detail, the level of detail. I'm okay with that. Surroundings feel okay too. No issues with that. If I had to compare both these couple of raids, you know, the Labyrinth of the Ancients and the Syrcus Tower, with something from World of Warcraft, obviously I'd have to go to the very bottom of the list there as well and start with comparing these to Molten Core and Blackwing Lair. I would say that Blackwing Lair was richer and probably better to my eye, to my personal kind of outlook on this, in terms of design and richness of environmental detail. But Molten Core would be worse, much worse than these two, but again, we are not really comparing one to one. We are sort of comparing apples to oranges, which is why I'm not doing too much of this comparison in this video. Quickly mentioning loot. Loot in these raids is frankly very underwhelming, even to my character, that is, look, not overgearing or not out-leveling this content by much. I get that it's only A Realm Reborn and it's very, very old content for Final Fantasy XIV, and whatever is rewarded in these raids is already superseded in terms of item level and value, probably even just by my class quest rewards, really. At least it feels that way to me as a player at this stage. Here is to loot feeling much better in Heavensward and other places that I'm definitely headed towards. But at this stage, it's just very, very meh. Now, going back a little bit to the boss fights and to the actual, like any fights in these raids, way too many special effects. I can't see what's happening. Like, oh my god. I suppose there must be a way to tune them down somewhere in the settings, and I very much welcome your advice on how to do that. As always, I welcome any of your advice as long as it's constructive. But regardless, at this stage, fights look like one big, unexplainable, messy mess to me. It's hard to enjoy, especially from a melee perspective. Quite honestly, if anything would ever make someone reconsider playing a melee character, it's things like this, it's experiences like this, it's encounters like this, in all honesty. I am like in the process of finding a kind of cool boss, and I like the boss, but I can't see me executing all those cool animated abilities and feeling their impact and being like truly in the moment as I fight this supposedly important kind of encounter, or raid boss specifically. So yeah, it's just hard to enjoy one big blob of light and sparkles and pew lasers and all that stuff. That's my only point here. It's crazy, at least to my eye. Not enjoyable. This bit is not enjoyable at all. I can't dress it up for you. Speaking of other not super enjoyable stuff, fights are way too quick. At least at this normal and old, I understand, raid, yeah, level. Like, I'm still watching a quick cinematic as the boss enters the arena, and people who have no interest in that, obviously, and who have skipped the cinematic already killed the boss. Boom. It's absolutely crazy and points at a pretty disbalanced game in terms of boss health and the combined raid power, or DPS specifically, even though you would expect that if there is a level sync in place, which there should be at this stage, it should be somewhat balanced, right? But it doesn't look like it. So only some fights seem to last the time required for me to even see and experience some of those boss mechanics. I don't know, dodge a thing here and there, die to a thing here and there. Just normal raid stuff that makes us like raiding, like makes us enjoy actual raiding. Again, I totally expect this to get better once I'm truly out of ARR, but if it stays like this, then look, OMG, I don't know if I will be enjoying raiding going forward in Final Fantasy XIV, if this is literally what I have to expect. And again, I welcome your insight on this. Continuing to talk about the fights and just generally the feel of the raids, there is a massive sense of a race or a rush through the raid. It is not something that I'm enjoying, and I understand that everyone can get used to anything, right? But it doesn't necessarily make you enjoy it. So this bit is definitely not enjoyable for me. It's an OMG, another OMG moment for me. It's a crazy rush. It's just not even funny. I've seen a similar approach to traversing the dungeons, starting with the infamous Castrum Meridianum and Praetorium, and here we have the same thing. The raid is a race, not a slow traversing through a dangerous environment full of hazards, patrols, possibly some trash and bosses. That takes longer than 12 seconds to kill, I must add. No, it's a literal race to another target, boom, it's dead, race to another, boom, it's dead, and so on and so forth. That's how the raid feels to me at the moment. So that brings me to the point of kind of where I'd like to put the few previous points together and sort of conclude here a little bit. I'll say that even if the quality of the environments and boss models is comparable to those from the starting WoW raids, then mechanically, feeling-wise, immersion-wise, these early raids leave a pretty inconsequential, borderline boring impression on me as a WoW refugee, and I'm not here to bash the game. I love it now, it's my home now, so please don't just rush to defend blindly. Just hear me out, right? I am still interested to see new stuff, but that's about it. All that drives my interest and enjoyment of these raids, because I did enjoy them to an extent, even though there was horrible lag, in this particular instance, it's just that new stuff. It's just the part of the storyline, part of the new environments, part of this new animation, new stairs appear kind of in the Crystal Tower. I don't know. I enjoy that bit. I do. But mechanics, the absolutely mad rush, the ball of light that basically the whole fight turns into, the no natural pace, slow down, or even recognition of me as a participant, as a tank. I'm one of the tanks. But even the recognition and reliance on me is non-existent. I am inconsequential in this stuff. Stuff still happens. I'm just like barely making it to the next boss, he's dead. Barely making it to another one, he's dead. Like, it's hard to enjoy an environment like this. It's very, very hard to do it. Bad connectivity, I have to call it out. It could be just me or a lot of Australians, or just at this time, as there is a massive influx of new players into Final Fantasy XIV from WoW, let's say. Connectivity with Final Fantasy XIV servers has been nothing short but shockingly bad. VPN helped a bit, as I've spoken to you about in the previous video. Check it out if you have skipped it but would like to hear my thoughts on it. But it's clearly the servers themselves that are struggling. It has nothing to do with even, the data packets traveling through the VPN to the servers. The servers are struggling to respond to me as a player in time, and that's where the lag is from. And yes, I've read an amazing, truly heartfelt apology from my man Yoshi P, explaining what causes this issue and how he takes accountability and how they are working hard to fix these issues. I appreciate their attitude and approach, truly I do. In the meantime, however, this is just a fact. The raids are... This morning was bearable, last night was a slideshow for me, practically. Early morning Syrcus Tower was a much better run, clearly, as you saw in the background footage here, but the previous evening peak hour of Labyrinth of the Ancients was a test of patience. A test of patience that I would not, if this performance continues, I'm not going to be paying for it. I'm not going to be paying for it. I will wait, I will respectfully wait until the service is good enough for me to play. But this is just absolutely ridiculous. So overall, summarizing this, my friends, I did enjoy seeing the new raids as the new content. This is there are a lot of things that I didn't enjoy, and I kind of pointed out to you and especially to my WoW players who I don't have to apologize to. I'm not bashing anything here from one last time, but it is just to manage their expectations as they come from WoW. Very differently feeling raids, very, very differently feeling raids. I think unlocking these raids, these Crystal Tower raids at the end of ARR is just a matter of personal achievement and trying to get a better feel for the game as a whole, for the story of Final Fantasy XIV, rather than anything of actual value to me as a player or to you as a potential player, other than maybe getting an occasional minion, like I got Onion Knight for completing, I think, Syrcus Tower, if I'm not mistaken. He is quite cute, I like him, he's not bad. Now is your turn, my friends. What do you think about all of this? How long has it been since you've been in those early raids? Let's not talk about wonderful raids at level 80. Bring yourself back to where I'm at. I'm at the end of ARR. Why do people run these raids? Do you still find some enjoyment in those? Do things get better? I suspect that they are, but I always welcome your little stories from the future for me. So any insights, any advice, as always, very much appreciated, as long as stuff continues being friendly and, constructive. That's all I can ask from you, and you can expect more of the same type of approach as I discover more of the game. It will be coming to you in a few days' time as I keep covering Final Fantasy XIV. And yes, once again, to those of you who are planning to play the new League of Path of Exile, I'm going to be doing that too. Shameless plug. Look out for those videos as well. Thanks very much for tuning in today, and I'll be speaking with you again very, very soon. See you later. Bye-bye.